On an autumn evening in 2015 in Toronto, Canada, police discovered the body of a young Chinese man named Wang Haozi lying motionless in the apartment he rented with friends. His death was quickly classified as suspicious due to signs of violence. Not long after, his schoolmate Betrayal Fan, also a Chinese international student, was arrested for murder. The case quickly caught the attention of the Chinese public, not only because of the seriousness of the crime, but also because of the identity of the defendant. A young man believed to come from a wealthy and powerful family, who seemed destined for a harsh sentence for a clear-cut crime. Yet the final verdict shocked the victim's family and the public. Just 5 years in prison for manslaughter, and, in reality, he was released after only a little more than a year. The verdict caused the victim's family to burst into tears right in court, while the Chinese online community erupted in outrage, questioning, can justice truly be bent by money and status? Welcome to my channel, where we explore the most mysterious cases and the most thrilling stories that you may have never heard of. Today, we'll dive into a case that shocked the Chinese international student community in Canada. A male student was beaten to death right inside his apartment, and the perpetrator only served just over a year in prison, thanks to his wealthy and powerful background. And as always, before we begin, please give us a like and a subscribe to support the channel. Thank you so much. In the early hours of May 7, 2017, the city of Toronto witnessed a tragedy when a hospital admitted a young man with severe brain trauma. After 12 hours of unsuccessful treatment, doctors were forced to declare that the victim had suffered complete brain death. The victim was identified as Wang Haozi, 19 years old, a Chinese international student from Hunan. The medical report showed his injuries were unusual and severe: extensive brain hemorrhaging, a severed carotid artery, and multiple facial and skull fractures. Such damage is usually only seen in high-impact traffic accidents. However, initial testimonies from the victim's friends suggested he was injured during a fight. This contradiction prompted doctors to alert authorities. At the victim's rental house in North York, police discovered a disturbing scene. The second-floor living room showed signs of a violent struggle, with large bloodstains on the floor and an incompletely clean sofa. This confirmed that it wasn't just a typical scuffle, but a deliberate homicide. Based on the testimonies of the victim's roommates, police quickly identified the suspect as Betrayal Fan, 20 years old, an international student from Guangdong. When arrested and handcuffed into the police car, Betrayal Fan shouted an emotional and haunting sentence: "Take care of Kiki for me." That sentence revealed the identity of a girl named Kiki, real name Jiaqi Tan, 19 years old, also a Chinese international student. The case was initially believed to stem from a complicated love triangle. Wang Haozi had been in a relationship with Kiki for nearly 2 years before she started dating Betrayal Fan. If things had ended there, the case might have wrapped up quickly. However, shocking information from friends and acquaintances of the three turned the case in an unexpected direction. Kiki, or Jiaqi Tan, was not a girl with a simple background. Several sources revealed that before coming to Canada, Kiki studied high school in Singapore, where she was allegedly the cause of several fights between male students, some of which led to 2 people being expelled and sent back to their home countries. After the incident in Singapore, upon arriving in Canada, she enrolled at MacDonald International Academy in Toronto to improve her English. But studying never seemed to be her top priority. Instead, Kiki's main goal was to find a boyfriend who could provide for her lavish lifestyle. Kiki even publicly posted an ad looking for a boyfriend, listing specific criteria: tall, handsome, fit, lean in clothes but muscular without, and most importantly financially stable, preferably owning a car and a house in Toronto. The post included several provocative photos of herself. Wang Haozi seemed to meet most of those criteria. He was 1.92 meters tall, good-looking, and came from a well-off family whose parents worked in foreign trade in China. While not exactly a millionaire, he had enough money to live comfortably in Toronto. More importantly, Hayoshi spoiled his girlfriend, excessively freely spending on designer bags, clothes, jewelry, diamond rings, and even gave Kiki access to his credit card. According to financial records from his family, Wang Hayoshi spent nearly 100,000 Canadian dollars on Kiki during their less than 2-year relationship. However, Hayoshi himself was not a model student. He studied English at another international school for Chinese students and frequently had to retake exams. After getting together with Kiki, Hayoshi began neglecting his studies, skipping classes so often that his teachers barely knew who he was. His academic performance declined rapidly, and combined with his excessive spending, his parents began to grow suspicious. They decided to cut his living expenses in half and gave him an ultimatum. If he failed to get into university within 6 months, he would have to return to China and choose a new path. With his main source of income restricted, the couple's standard of living dropped significantly. Kiki, accustomed to luxury, began expressing her dissatisfaction, mocking Hayoshi as a poor man pretending to be rich in an effort to maintain their lifestyle. Hayoshi gave up his $3,000 a month apartment and moved into a cramped basement unit. He cut back on meals and lived frugally. His 1.90-meter frame dropped to just over 60 kilograms, leaving him frail and weak. But even with all his sacrifices, he couldn't keep up with his girlfriend's spending. Seeing that Wang Hayoshi was no longer useful, Kiki turned her attention to a new target, Betrayal, a classmate at McDonald Academy. Not only was he tall and handsome with 7 years of Muay Thai training, but he also came from a wealthy and powerful family, an ideal CEO type lover straight out of a romance novel. In Kiki's eyes, Wang Hayoshi had become a weak, stingy, and useless man. More cruelly, even while secretly dating both men, she kept Hayoshi in the dark about her new relationship, continuing to squeeze out the last of his money. It wasn't until a week before the tragedy that they officially broke up and moved apart, heartbroken. By the betrayal and cold breakup, Wang Hayoshi left only a single line on social media, filled with anguish: "I finally understand. This Valentine's Day, I was still thinking about what gift to get you. This must be the greatest gift you've given me. I wish you happiness." This seemingly harmless status unexpectedly struck a nerve touching on the pain and pride of Kiki and her new boyfriend, Betrayal. That very post set Wang Hayoshi on a path to a tragic fate. Interpreting the message as an accusation that Kiki had been unfaithful, Betrayal and Kiki decided to confront Hayoshi at his rental home for a clear conversation. That night, a little after 10 p.m., the two stormed into the house in a fit of rage. After just a few heated words, the confrontation exploded into violence. Fortunately, a roommate heard the commotion and rushed out to intervene. Though separated, the burly Betrayal pointed directly at Wang Hayoshi, who was lying on the floor, and threatened him. "If you keep messing with Kiki, I'll show you what I'm capable of." Then he pulled Kiki away and left. According to Eric Wang, Hayoshi's roommate, after Betrayal left, Hayoshi lay exhausted on the second-floor sofa, using a cold towel to stop the bleeding from his nose. In that miserable moment, having just been betrayed and violently attacked, all Eric could do was offer a few words of comfort before going back to bed. About an hour later, as Eric was drifting off to sleep, a loud noise startled him. When he came out, he was horrified to see Betrayal had returned, this time wearing only a tank top, sitting on top of Hayoshi, pinning his chest with his knee, and relentlessly punching him in the face. Eric rushed to intervene, but Betrayal, his hands covered in blood, snarled at him. "Do you know who I am? You want me to hit you too?" Terrified, Eric could only stand and watch as Betrayal landed 4 or 5 more punches before finally stopping. By then, Wang Hayoshi was unconscious, his face completely disfigured. Eric pulled out his phone to call the police, but was suddenly stopped by Kiki, who had been watching the entire scene unfold. 911 is the police. If you call them, this will become a big deal. Fearing her furious boyfriend would spiral out of control, Eric opted to call a taxi and take Hayoshi to the hospital. But that delay cost Hayoshi his best chance at survival. Based on eyewitness testimony, police quickly charged Betrayal Fan with second-degree murder. In the initial interrogation, Fan claimed this was his first time meeting Hayoshi. His original intention was simply to get Hayoshi to stop slandering Kiki among the international student community. However, during the argument, Hayoshi provoked him. "I already slept with her. Now you're just picking up used shoes." That sentence ignited Fan's rage. He punched Hayoshi in the face and head. With 7 years of Muay Thai and Sanda experience, Fan's blows were powerful, causing a bloody nose and facial swelling. Despite the attack, Hayoshi managed a weak slap in return. Fan was about to continue but was stopped. The two then left Hayoshi's house. On the way home, Kiki began crying, expressing her frustration. Fan, still furious, felt his earlier punch hadn't been strong enough. At that point, Kiki made a suggestion. Hayoshi's house had a back door leading directly to the upper floor that wasn't locked. If they snuck back in, they could catch him off guard and attack again. And Betrayal Fan followed through. Under his girlfriend's guidance, he returned for a second time, and his excessive violence ultimately took Wang Hayoshi's life. In the face of the urgent situation, Betrayal Fan's parents immediately leveraged their financial power to rescue their son. They did not hesitate to hire Greenspan, one of Canada's top criminal lawyers, with an hourly fee ranging from $2,000 to $3,000, not including bonuses if they won the case. The Fan family paid CAD $375,000 to bail their son out. When the media began to dig deeper, it was revealed that Betrayal Fan had been living in a CAD $2 million mansion bought by his parents a year earlier. This immediately sparked suspicion about his family background. Soon after, a source revealed that Betrayal's father was Fan Di, a former director of the Dongguan branch of the construction bank. The fact that a banker could so easily spend tens of billions of dong raised serious public questions. However, lawyer Greenspan proved that he was worth every penny. He immediately overturned the defendant's initial statement, arguing that his client was not fluent in English and had been misled during interrogation, resulting in an inaccurate testimony. Later, under the lawyer's strict supervision, Betrayal Fan provided a new account. His return to Hayoshi's house was merely to retrieve a forgotten cigar box and car key. He initially intended to quietly grab his belongings and leave without encountering Hayoshi. But when he went upstairs and saw Hayoshi on the phone, a conflict erupted again. Hayoshi was the one who lunged forward to attack first, and he merely tried to push back, restraining him with an elbow to the knee. When he saw Kiki being threatened by Hayoshi, he threw a few punches to calm the situation. But Betrayal Fan could not have anticipated that the girl he acted for out of love, Kiki, would vanish in the midst of this storm, leaving him to bear the consequences alone. Shortly after the incident, Toronto police surprised the public by announcing they would not prosecute Kiki due to insufficient evidence and would cease their investigation into her incitement. Once her passport was returned, Kiki seemed to vanish completely. Her phone was disconnected, her Weibo account was wiped, and she moved out of her residence without leaving a trace. Even the emergency contacts she had given her school could no longer be reached. With the loss of this key witness, Betrayal Fan's defense attorney quickly introduced a bold new argument that the victim, Wang Hayoshi, had actually intended to end his own life and deliberately provoke the attack to ensure his death. It was a masterstroke of legal strategy. While worth Greenspan's $3,000 per hour fee, it was an argument that few could have imagined without over 20 years of legal experience. Greenspan insisted that this claim was not fabricated. He explained that during the second assault, Wang Haozi had been talking on the phone with a friend who overheard the entire incident. Police later confirmed that they had located this witness. Witness claimed to have heard Wang suddenly shout, "What the hell, how did you get in here?" Followed by a series of chaotic noises, possibly the phone falling under the sofa, along with loud crashing sounds, as if something heavy had pinned someone down, and the fierce voice of a man screaming, "Hit him! Hit him! I'm gonna beat you to death." Then the call abruptly ended. The prosecution argued that the phrase, "I'll beat you to death," was shouted by the defendant, Betrayal fan, during the assault on Wang Haozi, clearly expressing murderous intent. However, the defense countered that it was actually the victim who said it, saying, "Go ahead, beat me to death." The lawyer even hired 2 Mandarin-speaking voice actors to reenact the line in court for the non-Chinese-speaking jury to hear and assess the similarity. This move was condemned as utterly shameless, because to those unfamiliar with the language, the 2 lines would sound identical, though their meanings are entirely opposite. Strangely, under persistent questioning, the witness Wang's friend began changing his testimony, saying he wasn't sure what he heard or who said it. This created a major hole in the case. No matter how scared someone is or how much voices may shift, Wang Haozi was from Henan, while Betrayal fan was from Guangdong regions with clearly distinct accents. How could one not tell who said what? For some reason, the witnesses change in testimony quickly tipped the case in the defendant's favor. Once all the arguments were strategically laid out, Greenspan delivered the final blow. A forensic expert invited by the defense testified that Wang Haozi died from a severed neck artery causing massive internal bleeding. According to bruising patterns, the expert concluded that the fatal injury occurred during the first altercation. This meant that after the initial blow, Wang was already suffering internal hemorrhage, leaving him dizzy and needing rest on the couch. The fatal process had already begun and was irreversible. The second beating by Fan merely accelerated Wang's death, but was not the direct cause. You might think, doesn't that still mean Betrayal Fan killed him? No, there's a subtle legal distinction here. The first fight was mutual. Even if Wang was overpowered, he had initiated physical contact. Thus, Fan's actions could be seen as excessive self-defense, not intentional homicide. After endless arguments, the case came down to a few weak points. Though Greenspan was harshly criticized for ethics and opportunism, no one could deny his masterful legal skills. The jury, while not fully buying the self-defense claim, also didn't believe this was second-degree murder. As a result, Betrayal Fan was sentenced to 5 years in prison for manslaughter, a compromise verdict. Under Canadian law, he would be eligible for parole after serving half the sentence. Plus, pretrial detention counts as 1.5 times the duration toward the sentence. Therefore, in reality, Betrayal Fan would only need to serve a little over a year before being released. When the verdict was read, Wang Haozi's parents couldn't hold back tears. Their eyes were red. Wang's twin brother publicly condemned the sentence as unfair. In stark contrast to the victim's family's heartbreak was the image of the defendant and his lawyer high-fiving in celebration. After serving only a year, Betrayal Fan was still young, with a bright future ahead as the son of a wealthy family. While Fan at least faced jail time, his girlfriend Kiki had completely vanished and severed ties, pretending not to know him. Rumors claimed she returned to China during the trial, but a reliable source said Kiki was still living in Toronto, having changed her name and transferred schools. She continued to live lavishly, dressing glamorously, shopping, and enjoying a luxurious lifestyle. Some even claimed she was the daughter of the director of the Shenzhen Civil Aviation Bureau. However, this information remains unverified. While this case has come to an end, I'd like to share a few personal reflections on this journey. What we've discussed is only one extreme and cannot represent the entire community of international students. From what I know, most graduate students in Canada work extremely hard, juggling both study and part-time jobs while living very responsibly. However, in such a vast country with a sparse population and stark cultural and linguistic differences, even with the freedom it offers, loneliness often hits unexpectedly. Because of this, many students choose to indulge in parties and neglect their studies. We fully understand the challenges of China's education system and the worries of many parents. Sending children abroad is not an act of giving up. Parents must carefully consider whether their child is truly ready, not just financially, but more importantly, emotionally. Studying abroad is not a magical gateway to a perfect life, nor is it a terrifying storm. It's a road full of challenges, and only those with courage, resilience, and optimism can persist to the end. If you make it through, you'll not only gain unique experiences, but also embark on an unforgettable adventure. Betrayal fan case is a textbook example of the divide between law and public perception of justice. Legally, the entire Canadian court system ruled that the defendant committed manslaughter, a lesser crime than second-degree murder, based on motive, intent, and circumstances surrounding Wang Haozi's death. But to the public, especially the victim's family, the 5-year sentence and the fact that he served just over a year felt far too light, lacking both deterrence and any sense of closure. What infuriated the public even more was the sight of the defendant and his lawyer celebrating after the trial, completely at odds with the tearful grief of the victim's parents. That stark contrast gave people the impression that money, status, and background can tip the scales of justice. The outrage only deepened with rumors that the defendant's girlfriend, who was indirectly involved, was still living comfortably in Canada under a new identity, without facing any legal consequences. Behind this case lies not just a tragic death, but a reflection of the arrogance and irresponsibility of a subset of spoiled international students, wealthy, pampered, but lacking self-control and legal awareness. At the same time, it serves as a wake-up call for Chinese and broader Asian parents. Sending your child abroad is not simply buying a ticket to a bright future. It requires psychological, moral, and emotional readiness, even more than financial support. The Betrayal fan Wang Haozi case didn't just end with a controversial verdict. It left behind a flood of difficult, painful questions for society, the legal system, and the public. Is the law truly impartial toward everyone? Would the outcome have been different if the defendant had no wealth, no status, and couldn't afford a top-tier lawyer? When the perpetrator walks free and returns to a life of luxury, while the victim lies forever in a foreign land, is society quietly accepting a form of privilege that shields some from responsibility? This isn't just a personal tragedy, it's a mirror reflecting deeper social issues: justice, morality, education, and class inequality. And perhaps the most haunting part is, there may never be a truly satisfying answer. What are your thoughts on today's case? Leave a comment below and let's discuss together. And before you go, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to stay updated with more legendary cases here on my channel.